Hi, I'm Mike Cermak from Tech Support Guy, known on the site as Tech Guy. With me today is Dan.
Good afternoon.
How you doing today, Danny?
I am neato, nifty, and keen.
That's wonderful, but you know you wouldn't be nifty, neato, or keen if you had lost all of your data. Was that a beautiful transition or what? So today we're going to be talking about, that was painful, wasn't it? I can see your face.
That was funny. That was funny.
So today we're talking about online backups. It's something I've wanted to talk about for a while, and I thought we would just spend a short podcast today and discuss some of them, compare a couple of them, tell you what we use, and tell you some pros and cons of some big ones that are out there. We're going to talk a little bit about doing backups directly to a system like Skydrive or Dropbox. I talk about Carbonite, talk about Mozy, and also talk about CrashPlan, which is the one I use. So those are the big ones that are out there right now. I used to use Carbonite. Have you ever used Carbonite or Mozy or CrashPlan, Dan?
No. So I played around with Carbonite when online backups started becoming available, and I found the interface and the software to be pretty invasive. Mm-hmm. So I didn't like it being in my face all of the time, so I didn't do anything at all with it.
You know, and Carbonite is really in your face to the extent that, you know, whenever you're just looking at Windows Explorer or looking at files on your desktop, each of them will have a little symbol indicating whether or not Carbonite is backing them up, which in one sense is really a pain, but on the other sense is very useful, because my big beef with Carbonite, and they're the biggest one out there. Everybody knows Carbonite. They're so widely advertised. Everyone always asks me about Carbonite. And my big beef with them is that they're very limiting in what they will actually back up with their home plans. They only will automatically back up, let me see if I can find the actual official list here. There are photos, so JPEGs, things like that, emails that they recognize, doc files, word processor files, music to some extent, and that's pretty much it. And granted, those are the important things. But videos, it doesn't automatically back up because it takes so much space, which is, to Dan and I, who are fathers, videos can be pretty important. They're not always pirated movies that we've downloaded. Often they're actual videos that we want to back up. And the big thing that actually caught me off on Carbonite, I think the limit used to be 2 gigabytes, but I see now they're advertising that it's 4 gigabytes, that you can do a manual individual backup of files that are over 4 gigabytes, but there's no automated way. If you tell it, back up all the files in this folder, it will do all of them except for files that are greater than 4 gig. And I think that used to be a lower limit, but that seems to be it now. And that really caught me once because I didn't realize that. I had, as many geeks do, I had folders within folders within folders of structure, and I told it to back up this whole folder, and I didn't go in and look at each individual one to make sure that it was, because why would I? I told it to back up that folder. I didn't go in and investigate to look at every individual file to see whether or not they were actually checked to be backed up, and as it turns out, it doesn't back up files over 4 gig. And so I actually got caught in a case where I needed to restore a file that hadn't been backed up because I was using Carbonite.
What was the file, if I might ask? What was the data content?
I honestly don't remember. I think it may have been a video file for either this podcast or another video project I'd been doing. I think it was a video file. Probably an uncompressed, from an HD camera, big old file.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And it wasn't a big deal. I was able to get it, but it was just a pain. And it was I was kind of, I don't want to use a bad word. I was very unhappy with that surprise. I was frustrated that I didn't know that information. They make it a little more apparent on their website now when you investigate their features a little bit, but I just thought that was kind of lame. Or at the very least what they should do, and maybe they do now, but they didn't then, is if I right-click on a folder and say back up this folder, it should say, all right, I'm going to back up everything except for these things, just so you know.
Sure.
Just a little heads up.
A warning message. Yeah.
But on the other hand, if you tell it to back up a folder and then save a 4 gig file to it, is it automatically going to pop up and say, hey, by the way, this isn't getting backed? I don't know. That's just... Anyhow, so that's my rant, my disappointment with Carbonite. I think they're good. I think they're great for most users. 99% of users aren't going to have a file over 4 gigs they need to back up anyway. So, but it's just, and they don't back up all files, only certain file types that they recognize. Right. So it's just, I don't know. It's and the other thing with Carbonite that I've heard a lot of people complain about is they have unlimited, but then they really limit how quickly you can upload information to them after you hit a certain cap. So it's almost bandwidth limiting after a time, not space limiting.
Yeah, that doesn't sound good at all. But
yeah, so after that bad experience, I switched to a company called Mozy. I don't know if you've ever used them, mozy.com. And I'm not affiliated with any of these companies, by the way, so I get nothing out of telling you to use one over the other. But Mozy is another one that's pretty popular, and they were real popular whenever some bad things came out about Carbonite. A lot of people switched to Mozy, and then Mozy dropped their unlimited plan. And as far as I know, they still don't offer an unlimited plan anymore. And a lot of people like that. Now, I think it could be argued as to whether or not that's critical. Maybe, because they have a plan for 125 gig for $10 a month. I would say most people don't need to back up more than 125 gig unless a lot of it is pirated stuff that they can download again anyway.
I don't know about that, Mike. With everyone having DSLRs now, so with the DSLR, you can take very uncompressed or raw photos, and those raw photos are themselves huge files, relatively speaking. And then when you talk about HD videos, so most DSLRs can record video, 15, 20 minutes at a time in HD. And when you get that, that's going to be a couple of gigs in size. So every photo or every video that you take like that is going to be a couple of gigs, and you're going to get to that very quickly.
Yeah, that's a good point. It really is. And I suspect that's how I came up with a 4 gig file before, or I think it might have been 2 gig, whatever, a large file before that wasn't backed up. And so that's a good point. And this day and age, I think that's why backups are even more critical now, and why it's even more important to everybody, is that we all have our lives on the computer now. I have my 2-year-old son. There's never been an actual photograph taken of him. They've all been digital photographs. We have digital video. We have digital photos. And that's all stored on the computer. And in so many cases, it just doesn't get backed up. And that's a real shame. I mean, we're just not used to that mindset of this information is digital there, and it's wonderful because it can be reproduced so easily and managed so easily, but it can be lost so quickly as well if you don't back it up. So anyhow, so you're right. So maybe we do need unlimited. So another one, the one I've currently landed on that I'm really happy with, is a company called CrashPlan, and that's CrashPlan.com. And by the way, in the show notes, we'll have all of these different companies. We'll have links to all the websites, so you can go check them out. And if there's one that you really like, tell us about it. In the comments below, tell us that we're idiots for using CrashPlan, that instead we ought to use this other service, as long as you're not affiliated with them. No affiliate links in there. But I want to hear what other people are using and what you guys enjoy. And in the chat room too, Ecom, what do you use for backups, by the way? The one I use is CrashPlan. That's CrashPlan.com. And what's nice is they have a family plan. And I was telling Dan about this before the show. It's really economical. It's $150 a year for up to 10 computers, unlimited data. And I just don't know how you can go wrong on that. They have a plan for one computer. It's $60 a year for one computer, unlimited data, which is a great deal. But
Sure.
for most people, most families have more than one computer. So $150 a year, up to 10 computers, unlimited data backed up, is just outstanding. And one of my favorite things about them, of course, is that if I tell them to back up a folder, it backs up all the files that are in that folder. Go figure. That's a shocking idea, but
How does it do with bandwidth there, Mike?
what's nice with it is that you can set it similar, and most of these programs, Carbonite, all these other ones have features, Mozy have features like this as well. You can go in there and set it to run only during periods of time. You can say only between 2 a.m. and 6 a.m. run backups, or you can have it run all the time, which is what Carbonite and CrashPlan usually do. And you can also say only use up to this amount of bandwidth, and you can also say only use up to this percentage of CPU, and you can also say only run whenever the computer's idle. It has a lot of features if you dig down into it to tell it when you want it to run, and even if it is running, if I sit down at the computer in the middle of the night and it's running, sometimes I can notice it a little bit because I'm a geek that it's doing a backup. But you can right click down there and tell it to sleep for an hour or 2 hours or 4 hours, and that just pauses the backup for that period of time.
So, have you noticed, is it always backing up the same files regardless of whether or not they've been touched, or is it doing some
No.
modification?
Yeah, it's definitely going through and checking for files that have been modified. And it's only uploading them. So your initial backup with any of these online services, your initial backup is going to take forever.
Yes.
Because it's got to get all your files up there, gigabytes and gigabytes. So literally, you can expect it to take days or weeks or maybe even a month if you have a lot of data to do the initial backup. That is normal. But what's nice is after all those files are backed up and in the cloud, then the whatever program you're using is checking for files to be changed, and then it only uploads those changes as they happen. So then future backups take much less time, unless you're like Dan and I, and we generate another 4 gig file. That's again going to take a long time to upload.
Right.
So,
So you mentioned the 4 gig file. Did you say whether or not there's a file limit with CrashPlan?
there is not, which is one of the things I like about CrashPlan. It's so economical. It's unlimited. I don't know how they can keep doing it at this cost, other than the fact that most people don't use that much data. But having no limit on it is kind of nice. You don't have to worry about it.
Yeah, no file size limit for the geeks of the world. That's actually That's actually key. So we could theoretically do a full system backup and compress that and provide that up so that we have images of our computers that we could restore if our computers fail.
That's right. As far as I know, none of these major online backup systems offer actual imaging software in them, but you can download your own imaging software program and then back up that image file. And maybe there are some. It wouldn't surprise me if there are some out there that actually offer that as a feature, but I haven't seen it yet myself.
Sure.
But yeah, it's pretty awesome. I mean, in fact, I'm looking at CrashPlan's website now. I went under details, and it says unlimited file size. Some data backup services limit the size of files you can back up. CrashPlan backup software has no restriction on file sizes.
Right. So how big is their distinction between personal and business use? And the reason I ask that is that you've got a lot of people running home businesses that are the line between a business computer and a personal computer is very gray.
Right.
So I assume that there's the liability associated with CrashPlan on a business use as opposed to a personal use. But if for example, I didn't care about them holding themselves liable for basically any financial burden I incurred because of data loss, what is the difference?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. There doesn't seem to be, if you go into their comparison chart, there isn't a real big difference between their business version and their home version, except for, of course, cost, and they add some user features, so you can have multiple users log into the account with different permissions. But you're right. I think the biggest reason they make that distinction is for liability reasons, that if for some reason a backup were to be lost, obviously the cost of that, the value of that may be much greater for a business than for a home user. And I suspect you're right. I think that they probably don't care much. If you back up your business computer using the CrashPlan Home, I'm sure they'd much prefer you do it under the business version. But I suspect they really don't care unless you actually try to sue them, and then they'll say, too bad.
Sure. I mean, so the uses for backups. I mean, we've mentioned pictures, videos, emails. But for those of us that use home accounting software or small business accounting software, backing up your accounting databases is yet another, if you're not already using some kind of cloud-based accounting software anyway, backing up your data there, your QuickBooks backup, that's key.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, the saddest thing I have in our shop, in the computer shop, is people coming in all the time with all of the pictures of their kids on the computer, and the computer stopped working, and they're so fearful they've lost all of it. In some cases, they have. I mean, sometimes we've had to give people bad news, and it's really critical, and it's one of those things you don't think about doing until it's too late. So,
and on that note, most people are on Facebook, they're on Google+, they're on some social media, maybe even still somehow Picasa or something like that. A lot of these social networking sites have automatic backups of your mobile device. So your camera, and I would venture a guess that most photos today are actually taken from a phone. Those are actually automatically backed up, or you have the ability to automatically back those up to Facebook or Google+, or maybe even Picasa or something like that. So you can avoid some of that by putting your photos in there. Now, they're not automatically shared with everyone when you use Facebook or Google+ auto backup feature, if you will. So you're not necessarily exposing all of your photos to everyone without some manual intervention, which is also key. In addition to that, a lot of the new cameras are coming out with Wi-Fi built in so that they could potentially automatically upload the photos to whatever service you're using so that you're automatically getting them backed up like that.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And I know someone on Sexport Guy board often says that data that isn't backed up is data that isn't important. And it's one of those things that, if you don't back it up, you're basically saying to the world that, to the powers that be, that it's not important, and you let go of it. And it's a good idea. My point in saying this is that it's a good idea to have more than one backup. If you have it on your computer, you have it in the cloud, it wouldn't hurt to also have it for critical stuff especially, but maybe for everything, on an external hard drive, on a flash drive. I mean, hard drive or storage in general is just so inexpensive now. If you have your pictures on your computer and up in one of these photo services that Dan was mentioning, and saved to Carbonite or CrashPlan, you're pretty well safe. Your photos are going to be somewhere.
Yeah.
But it doesn't hurt to have extra copies of things like that. So tell me about what you use, Dan. I understand you don't really use any of these big popular backup services.
I use a combination of Dropbox and Skydrive and a little bit of Google Drive. I'll tell you why. So I like being able to. I'm doing a code project for you right now, Mike, and that code project I can put into Skydrive, almost like a versioning system, so that you and I can share the code back and forth, and we can review it in a social kind of environment, and it automatically syncs. So as soon as I modify a file, Skydrive pulls it and throws it up there. Skydrive's my primary backup, if you will, and I store my code. I don't back up emails because I use Gmail as my email provider, so it's already fairly well backed up. I store images. I store my documents. I store my accounting backup in SkyDrive now. And anytime I make any kind of journal entry, then my accounting software or my accounting files are backed up to SkyDrive. And it's just seamless. It's non-invasive. And when it's a Microsoft Word document, Excel document, or anything that I could potentially edit using a Microsoft Office product, I can do it online using the built-in editor into SkyDrive on Office 365.
So that brings up a question that I get asked a lot. I want to get your opinion on this. People are always concerned with their data, especially, sometimes even with pictures, but especially with financial data. Is it safe to back that up into the cloud? Is it safe to have it backed up onto the internet?
Your financial data is already in the cloud.
That's a good point.
I mean, it's there. All of your financial institutions are online. They are equally as exposed as someone, say, Google or Microsoft, any of that. Now, with that being said, my account numbers would be in my accounting files. That's true. But you could easily get I think you would more easily get my account number by phishing than you would by accessing my backups.
Yep. Well, and the other thing to keep in mind with this is that all of these major backup services, if you stick with one of the well-known ones, like the couple we've mentioned today, they all use really good file encryption and communication encryption. I'm looking at CrashPlan right now. They use 448-bit file encryption, so before the file even leaves your computer, it's encrypted 448-bit, and then communications encryption, of course, everybody uses 128-bit. So it's really, even if there was someone sniffing the connection between here and there, it's going to be really difficult for them to try and get any information out of it. I mean, that's at least as high a grade, sometimes higher grade than what your bank uses for your communication to them anyway.
Right.
So, and that's the same with any of the major companies. They're really well encrypted, and sure, there's always a chance that something could happen. There's always a chance that someone could figure out a way to hack into their system, but then a lot of these services also allow you to put a personal encryption key on the files as well if you really want to get paranoid about it. So it's something worth looking into.
Absolutely. One other option I want to mention out there, Mike, is that a lot of your ISPs will offer, as part of your service with them, a minimum or minimal backup option. Comcast does it. I used to live in the boonies in Pennsylvania, and Frontier has it. So, Mike, I don't know if they offer anything like that I'm sure they offer something like that for the business users. But
yep, you're right. Now, you're right. It's usually very minimal. They don't give you a whole lot of space. But if you just copy your critical things there as well as to these other backup services, then right, you're pretty well covered. And it wouldn't hurt if you want to do more than one. Yeah, that can be your multiple backups. I kind of like having and this is a whole different discussion about the cloud in general. We can come back to another day. But it's nice being able to actually hold your physical data and have a copy of it physically on hand. So having a physical backup of it in addition to some of these cloud services is often a good choice. One other thing I wanted to mention whenever I was talking about CrashPlan, I forgot to mention, is they offer a free version as well, which I also thought was fascinating. And the way it works is it allows you to back up your computer to a friend's computer. So, for example, if Dan goes onto his computer and installs CrashPlan, and I go to my computer and install CrashPlan, the free version, then we can set up our computers to back up to one another. And of course, it's encrypted, so Dan can't read my stuff and I can't read his stuff. But generally speaking, and I would be willing to bet, and maybe I think Dan would agree with me. It's even if we really wanted to, and we're pretty geeky, I think you and I both would not be able to break into these files very easily. Now, granted, the free version is only 128-bit file encryption, but even so, I think that would take a very long time.
More time and resources than I would care to give to it.
So, but and of course, you would probably only want to do that with someone you trust anyway. But it's a neat service for those who really don't have any money to spend on backups. At least you can do that. Just hook up with a friend who has a little bit of free hard drive space, and you can do it across multiple friends if you happen to have multiple friends. Anyway, I thought that was worth mentioning and kind of a neat service. I do that. Maybe I shouldn't mention this on one of my computers that maybe isn't in my home. I have it copied to my home computer using the free version, so I have an extra offline backup using that.
One of the things I like about the cloud-based, it's very similar to what you're talking about there, Mike, is the social aspect of it. So, Mike, say for example, I was writing an article for Tech Support Guy's newsletter. And I wanted to share that with you before we published it in there. So using Skydrive, Google Drive, or even Dropbox, I can share that with you in a read-only or a shared mode, and we could collaborate like that using these cloud-based social platforms.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And once you get into that cloud-based system, then there's less and less need for a backup, unless you're really paranoid like me and like to download it and have a physical copy anyway.
That is definitely a fair point. So all of these cloud-based solutions don't necessarily give you full access to all of the data all of the time for you to do a one-click download of everything that you own.
Most of them offer some sort of application you can download and install that'll put all those files, a copy of those files physically on your computer to synchronize.
Right.
So at least you can do that and then be able to back those up if you want. So something to keep in mind. So I want to wrap this up. I don't want to go too long. Hopefully people will be interested enough to watch this. I'm eager to hear some feedback on this, hear what pros and cons you see to the backup solutions we discussed, and also if you have anything that you use that you'd like to share, that would be really interesting. So feel free to post that in the comments below. Dan, did you have anything else before I cut us off?
No, sir.
Great. Well, thanks a lot for your input. I appreciate that. And again, techguy.tv is the site, so if you go over to techguy.tv, you can find our show notes there. We'll link to all of these things. I'm also going to link to a comparison on Wikipedia of the different online backup services. They cover a bunch of them there. I don't know, there might be almost 100 different backup services there that they cover, and they have a nice little chart comparing some of the features, whether or not they support Linux or Mac or Windows or Android or iPhone or that sort of thing. So if those other comparisons are important to you, you can check that out as well. And that's it. If you have any questions on getting your backup set up, go to techguy.org, go into the forums. Someone in there will be happy to help you get those set up. And we'll see you next time. Have a good one.